In this session, let us learn about interfaces. Let us understand what is the use of an interface, why we are going in for an interface, the syntax and structure. Interface is similar to an abstract class. Interface is going to have abstract methods. It means with interface you can achieve abstraction. With one interface you can get multiple implementations or different implementations. When I have an abstract class for achieving abstraction, why do I need to go in for an interface? Say for example, I have an employee class and two subclasses of employee as manager and programmer. Now this employee wants some additional functionalities, like the employee wants to take up training. The employee wants to have some sports meet. The employee wants to take up some transport. And all these are having some methods, abstract methods. If the employee wants to use these abstract methods, what actually it has to do? It has to extend it. Extend training, extend sports, extend transport. Is it possible? Is it relevant? No. In case of manager and employee, it is a real is-a relationship. Manager is a employee, programmer is a employee. So, if a class wants to utilize the functionality of some other thing, then in that case, you go in for interface. So, what I can do, I can make this as an interface, wherein I will be having methods. An interface is going to have abstract methods. Now, the employee wants to use this training interface. What is the meaning of it? It will take get course and it will add the courses as Node, Angular, Spring. Method is same, implementation is different. Now, I am going to have another class student. The student also wants to utilize training. I cannot write student extends training. It is highly irrelevant. The student wants to use the functionality of training. So, what the student can do? The student also can implement this training interface and it will implement the method properly. How? In case of get course, the student can write as microprocessor, C, C++. So the method is same and implementation is different. If you see here, employee is a different class, student is a different class. When you want to combine different classes under a common umbrella or a common functionality, then you go in for an interface. Let me come with other few more examples also. Say for example, I have a fly method. What and all can fly? An eagle can fly. A Superman can fly. A aeroplane can fly. An aeroplane can fly. Are these similar type of classes? No. Eagle is of type bird. Superman is of type superhuman. Aeroplane is of type vehicle. So they have their own is-a relationship, but they want additional functionalities. So what they are trying to do? All of them are having a common behavior, flying. An eagle can fly with wings. A Superman can fly with superpowers. An aeroplane can fly with the help of wings or its own engine. Right? So when you want to group them together, go in for an interface. Now let me go back to the previous slide and we will see what are the methods that are available in an interface. An interface can have abstract methods. We have seen that already. What is the use of it? Default methods. When all these classes want to have a common behavior, you need to have a common method just like what you had in an abstract class. So this is called as a default method in case of interface. Another one is static method. An interface can also have variables. By default, the variables are public, static and final. Why public? If it is an interface, it has to have multiple implementing classes. So the variables in an interface should be used by the implementing classes. That is why they have made it as public. Why static? An interface is like an abstract class. You cannot create objects for an interface. So it is static. And what about final? It is a constant value. Different types of classes are going to share the variable. None of the classes should change the value. So what they have made is the variables in an interface are by default public, static and final. Okay, this is the syntax. Interface, interface name, within which you can write the abstract methods. The methods are by default public and abstract. So you don't have to use the abstract keyword. So I have shown the complete syntax. Public static final variables, int v equal to 100. Neither I have used public nor static nor final. They are by default implicitly shown. And void fly, what type of method it is? It is abstract method. I don't have to use the abstract keyword. Default void check, what type of method it is? It is a default method which can be used by all the implementing classes of this particular interface. The keyword is default over here. Now let us see the example what we have discussed. Interface flyable. What is the naming convention for an interface? It should be in the form of adjective. Flyable, comparable, runnable. Comparable, runnable, these are all inbuilt interfaces. Now I have got a method fly. I want to implement it. So I need to create classes to implement the abstract method. The keyword which we are using here is implement. In case of is a relationship, you use the keyword extends. This is for man, this is for plane, and the next one is for a bird. How to call the method in these classes? Already you have learned when you are working with abstraction, you must never show the implementation class. Always call it using superclass reference is equal to subclass object. In case of superclass, here we are having interface. So we will be writing it as interface reference is equal to implementation class. When I call reference.fly, it will go and check to which object this reference is pointing to. It is pointing to this man. Automatically the method in this particular class will be called. Same way for plane and bird. This is all about interfaces. Now let us deep dive again why we are going in for interfaces. There are two main reasons why we need to go in for an interface. The first one is when I want to group different types of classes under a common category. Say for example, you have different WhatsApp groups or you are a member of different WhatsApp group. Say you are in a tennis group, you are in a school group, in a college group, and again in a work group. There are chances that you might not be knowing the people in tennis group. Because you are in that particular tennis sport, automatically a group is formed. So multiple people who don't know each other, they are grouped under a common category tennis. Multiple people who don't know each other, they are grouped under a common, common company work. People who don't know each other grouped under a common group, that is college. Same way, multiple classes are grouped under a common category. That is why we need interfaces. For example, I have an interface with the name serializable. This is an inbuilt interface. When a class implements this particular interface, it means that the class can be serialized. Means you can pass on the details to the network. If a class is not implementing the serializable, then the class cannot be serialized. So, to make them behave in a common manner for a particular stuff, you go in for interface. This is one thing. The next one is, you know that in case of Java, Java supports simple and multi-level inheritance. If a class wants to utilize multiple functionalities, then also we can go in for interface. In the previous example, we had an employee class. The employee wants to use the functionality of transport, functionality of training, functionality of recreation, sports. In that case, the employee class cannot extend all these. That is not also relevant. He just wants to use those functionalities. So what I can write? Class employee implements training, comma, recreation, comma, sports, comma, training. So when a class wants to use multiple functionalities, we need an interface. So these are the two main criteria why we are going in for an interface. One more example is given over here. Class bird implements flyable and swimmable. Means you are getting two functionalities for a single class. Now that we have seen why we need interfaces, let us also understand few more things on an interface. An interface also can be without methods. These interfaces are called as marker or tag interface. In Java API, there are few interfaces like this. Serializable, clonable. How the syntax will be then? It is something like interface name. So in this case it is serializable. Start the curly brace, end the curly brace. No method within this. What is the reason for going in for a marker interface? The idea is, if a class implements serializable, the class can serialize its object. If a class is not implementing it, it cannot serialize the object. You are trying to group it. Say for example, you are a part of a college WhatsApp group. Whatever messages are coming, it is coming only to you. I am not getting those messages because I am not a part of that particular group. Similarly, if a class implements serializable, the class can be serialized. If a class implements clonable, you can create duplicate objects for the class. WhatsApp group is nothing but like a marker interface. You are not actually doing anything. The multiple classes which are implementing the interface are really doing the work. The people in the WhatsApp group are really sending and receiving messages. People who don't belong to that particular group will not receive messages. Similar to that is this marker interface. Just for grouping different types of classes together under a particular category. If an interface is going to have only one abstract method, it is called as functional interface. We will be discussing about functional interface in detail in the upcoming session. So, this is all about interface. We have understood what is an interface, what is the use of interface, why do we need to go in for an interface, and what is a marker interface. In the next session, let us see examples for working with interface. Thank you.